question is, what is the fourth kingdom? Well, then came the Roman Empire. And you go, well, wait a minute, did the Roman Empire crush all of the others? And the answer is, well, kind of. I mean, it crushed some of them. Now, what I've done here, you can see that kind of eastern line. There was a period, see, the problem with the Roman Empire is that eastern border was constantly fluctuating down through history. The Roman Empire, depending on how you interpret it, existed for roughly 1,500 years. And so that the eastern provinces, they were constantly butting up against another empire called the Parthian Empire. They were Persian peoples. They were leftovers from the Medo-Persian Empire. And so in AD 116, looking at this map, Emperor Trajan, he wanted to be the new Alexander. He wanted to do what Alexander did and conquer the whole Middle East. So he went down of those two rivers that go up through. You've got the Tigris is basically on the right, the Euphrates on the left. He went down the Euphrates, hopped on the Tigris, and he reached the ruins of ancient Babylon. It was a ruinous city, but he did reach it, and he reached all the way over to Susa, which was one of the capitals of the Persian Empire. And he made it there for a couple months, established a garrison, and then he had a heat stroke. He withdrew, and he died within a few months. So of the 1,500 years, the Roman Empire did extend, if you will, sort of an arm down the Euphrates and the Tigris rivers, and it reached Babylon. But this only was in place literally for a few months. And then the Parthians beat them back. The way the Parthians used to wage war is they were sort of like guerrilla warfare, is when this mighty Roman Empire came, they would just withdraw. They would just step back and let them take land, and then they would just start picking at them, hammering at them, and then they would withdraw. They didn't just like put up a front and take them head on. They would just, because they were nomadic, they were on horses, they were archers, and it was no problem for them just to move back and then just start doing the guerrilla warfare. And the Romans constantly, they never could get a grid on that. They were used to this head-on, type of engagement. And so Hadrian was Trajan's general. He took over after Trajan died of the heat stroke, and he determined that from there forward, this would be the furthest eastern border of the Roman Empire. He said, we're never going to go past the Euphrates. It's not worth it. We're just going to stay happy. The point is this, is the Roman Empire, unlike the others, everything shifts west. Yes, it goes into the Middle East a bit, but it's different than the others. How many, grew up on Sesame Street, right? Did I include it in? There it is. I thought I cut it. One of these kids is doing his own thing. You remember that? There'd be like a kid bouncing a ball. And so all three of these kids are the same, but one's different. This was a profound part of our early development learning. So of the four empires, you go back and you look at them, right? Babylon, Middle Eastern Empire. Medo-Persian Empire, a much larger Middle Eastern empire. Greek Empire, it spanned from Europe all the way to India, but very much a Middle Eastern empire. The Roman Empire, it's largely a European empire that includes a bit of the Middle East. One of these kids is not like the others. And then you had the only other empire in history that stands as a candidate. It's the only one that really stands as a candidate to fulfill the prophecy of the fourth kingdom. And so in the 7th century, down there in Arabia, just to the right, to the east of the Red Sea, a young man named Muhammad goes out into a cave to fast and pray, as was the habit of all the pagans of Arabia at the time. And he goes into the cave during Ramadan, which was a pagan holy month, and he's fasting and praying. This presence comes over him, and it literally, according to the Islamic documents, the Islamic story, it's choking him, it's crushing him. He's terrified. And it demands in Arabic, it says Iqra, which is recite. And this is from where we get the word Quran, Iqran. It's the recitation. And it says Iqra. And he says, I don't know how to recite, because basically what you had in Arabia in those days was you had these ecstatic poets. And so these guys they would allow spirits to channel through them, and they would basically rap in Arabic. They would recite poetry. It's kind of like Beyonce today, if you're tracked with popular culture, right? She says, what is it? Sasha Fierce. All these pop singers now, they say they have like some spirit that they allow to take over, and when I dance, I just let it happen. It just never works. But basically, he says he was terrified. He goes, I don't want to be like he was embarrassed of these guys. And he goes, I'm not one of these ecstatic poets. The second time this presence comes over him, and it's just crushing him. It says, Ikra! And he's terrified. And according to his own testimony, he believed it was a demon. He believed it was going to kill him. And it happened 3 times. 3 times this presence, and he felt like it was he thought he was going to die. Ikra, on the 3rd time, he opened his mouth, and the first words of the Quran began to flow out of his mouth. This is the beginning of the inspiration of the Quran, the holy book that now guides 1.62 billion people throughout the earth. Okay, it's very different than the examples in the Bible where angels show up, right, and they're like, fear not, fear not. They touch him and pick him up. Hey, look, don't worship me. I'm just a servant. This thing comes up and basically tries to kill him, scares the living, whatever out of him. And then it said a couple weeks, again, Muhammad's own testimony, for a few weeks he was trembling. He was suicidal. He goes back to his wife. He couldn't stop trembling, and he believed he was demon-possessed. His much older wife, Khadijah, who was running this successful business and using him as her primary boy to kind of run the company. I think she was like 15 years older or so. She basically says, now, Muhammad, you're not demon-possessed. You're a prophet. Go with it. And basically, she convinced Muhammad to allow these experiences to continue, filled him with, self-aggrandizement, and you're amazing and all this stuff, and you're destined to do all these wonderful things. And he bought into it. And he allowed the flattery and so forth to guide him. And thus we have today the Quran. People call this a holy book. And what's amazing is that when you look at the Quran, it's specifically, other philosophies and things, they disagree with this book. But very rarely do you have like a holy book that specifically names all of the essential, foundational revelations as described in the Bible, the self-revelation of God, and call them gross blasphemies. If you believe that Jesus died on the cross, it says right in the Quran, it never happened. It's just you're delusional. You have nothing but conjecture to follow. If you believe that Jesus is the Son of God, that God sent his very essence into the earth to take on flesh because he loves us so much, you are the greatest blasphemer in the world. It literally names all of the essential foundational doctrines of the historic biblical faith, and it attacks them it goes right for the jugular. It doesn't take the discernment of a log to look at that and say, that's a demon, that's Satan. Now, that's not to puff our chests and say, yeah, we got the truth and they don't. That should give us compassion for Muslims to say, God, open their eyes. Break the blinders off. Do for them what you did for us. That's his heart. So Muhammad has this revelation. Go back to the map. He basically is very successful desert pirate / cult leader. Let's just say he did a lot better than David Koresh. And next thing you know, he dies, and his religion explodes across the Middle East. And today, this is basically the part of the world that is dominated by Islam. And, again, looking at that, we can see that little dot where it says Jur, that's Jerusalem. Knowing that that is the center of God's purposes, what's more relevant to us today, the world of Islam or Europe? How have we missed this? How has Islam flown under the radar for so long? Until 9/11, by and large, we're just like, it's just one more in a series of false world religion. Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, We just didn't quite know what to do with it. This thing surrounds Israel. This is the fountain of it's the primary source of anti-Semitism, of Jew hatred, and of this demonic desire to possess the promised land. This thing is the most significant force in the earth that is coming against God's promised plan to redeem all of creation. And somehow we've missed it. And it's like, it's not just right in front of us, it's like right in front of us. And somehow we've missed it. Now, did the Islamic Empire crush all the others? Did it crush Babylon, Medo, Persia, Greece? And the answer is absolutely, completely, without a question. The Roman Empire, you go, you got to try to shoehorn it in to make it fit. And you go kind of a little bit. I was with some Iranians, underground believers, and I said, did the Roman Empire crush Persia? And they're like, no. It reached some of our borders and it came in a little bit, but it never crushed the Persian Empire. So at the very best you can say is, kind of 2 of the 3, but not really. But yet every commentary that you read, it's not even a question. The Roman Empire is that which we're looking for to be revived in the last days. And I think that the scriptures are actually just a simple glance at history, a simple look at maps tells us no, we are looking for a revived Islamic Empire. And this caliphate, that's the Islamic government, this cry for the caliphate is arising throughout the Middle East. And I would say that the formation, the revival of that empire is in process right now. We're not there yet. ISIS is trying to do it. I think they're going to ultimately fail. I think that others will rise up and fulfill that longing in much of the Islamic world for Islamic Sharia law, for the Islamic government. But we can clearly see the landscape as described by the prophets coming into focus. And these things can happen fast. We're not there, this year is not the year, but we can see it coming into focus. We can see it just on the horizon.